This episode of the New Hampshire Business Show is sponsored by Everlasting Capital. If you're a small business and you need money and a bank won't give it to you, Everlasting Capital is here to help. In as quickly as a couple of days, you can have the funding your business needs for new equipment or anything else you're going to need the capital for. So submit your application today and see how they can help you out. Hello everyone and welcome back to the New Hampshire Business Show. My name is Chris Pastrana and today we're here with Karen Lagasse from Northpoint Mortgage. So when we get started, I know there's a couple things you wanted to say first, so...
Well, I just wanted to identify my company with its licensing of 1515 and my licensing of 44031.
Okay,
Thanks,
perfect.
Chris.
Yeah, I said totally get it. Real estate, and like I said, we were kind of talking about beforehand, and investing, and anything dealing with like money.
Yeah.
Pretty stingent on like, what you can and can't say, so I get it. It's pretty good. So yeah, let's get started. So let's talk a little bit about yourself at Northpoint Mortgage.
Okay. I started in the industry in September of 2000, and I was with one company for 8 years, moved over to Northpoint in 2008 when industry was kind of falling apart.
Yeah.
Had to make a move because the company I had been with looked like it wasn't going to succeed. 2 kids in school, a house. I was a little nervous, so made that move and very happy to have done so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So you said you moved from your first company to Northpoint?
To Northpoint.
Okay, and that was, you said 8 years in?
8 years with the first, and I'm starting my 11th year in April with this company.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you started back in 2000, that's almost 20 years. That's pretty good.
Yeah, right. I wrote out those, we had some great times. When I started in 2000, rates were 7.5%, which, and, look at them today, in the low fours. But it's been quite an experience.
Yeah,
quite
absolutely.
A journey. Yeah.
So I speak with a lot of real estate people, they naturally flood in here quite a bit. Excuse me. But to see some that, because back in the 2008, 2009 area when the market crashed,
yeah,
that must have been very interesting.
Oh, it was
As
scary.
far as being in real estate, yeah.
It was crazy because you'd come into the office, and this was more, I would say, in 2006 is when it really started.
Yeah.
2007, it was a roller coaster. You didn't know day to day if the say the broker that you were sending a deal to, because at the time I worked for a broker shop.
Yeah.
And so we would have these companies like Washington Mutual and I'm having a brain cramp, but there was so many of them, and they were just tumbling. Their doors were closed. You had all these loans with them. You had to figure out, what am I going to do with these loans? And it was so scary for the people and for yourself, because you just didn't know what was happening day to day.
Yeah. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Because I remember, I'm going to date myself here a little bit. Not really date myself, but 2006, I was senior year in high school.
Okay.
Right? So I was getting out of high school, and I only caught like the, kind of the edges of this because I was still with my mother. Wasn't even in college yet, so you kind of only hear about it.
Yeah.
And then, but to actually be living in it was pretty cool.
Well, and the scary thing for so many people during that era is that in 2001 is when the refinance market took over, right? So you had your 2002, 3, and 4. People were put into some really scary loans. People that were, working low-income jobs, buying homes $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 on a stated income program.
Yeah.
I mean, things that were not designed for them.
Yeah.
And yet they were put into these loans and then told that, you just have to stay in it for 2 years and you can refinance. And then sure enough, 7 and 8 and 9, and that house wasn't worth anything anymore.
Yeah.
They couldn't refinance. Their credit wasn't there. They didn't do the work necessary to get to where they needed to be. And a lot of people lost their homes. It was heartbreaking to hear and to know that some people that you actually worked with had lost their home.
Yeah. Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
So, I'm going to derail a little bit here.
Yes.
Why'd you get into real estate back in the beginning?
So, my former husband and I owned a service station in Manchester for 17 years.
Okay.
So, we closed the door in June of 2000. And I started doing the books for, at the time, a builder that was in the Bedford area. And I started waitressing to help out a friend. Because you go from having a business. We had a house in Bedford. You have 2 kids, and all of a sudden you have no income coming in, right? And so at the time, my former husband took a job doing stuff, and I'm doing this, and I ran into a friend of mine who got me started in this industry, and ran into her at Walmart buying school supplies. And I looked at her and I said, so how do you do this job? Do you have to have a college degree? Do you have to go to school? And she said no. So she called me that afternoon and said, you have an interview. So the next day I showed up and I learned to do this job. And it was trial and error. I remember going to work at the time, and now everything is automated. You go onto a computer, you get your rates, you can enter, everything is so easy. Back in 2000, you had rate sheets. It was like reading a foreign language. I had no idea what I was doing, had no idea what subprime and all this stuff meant, right? And it took me about, I have to say, about good 5 solid months of going in every day 9 to 2. Then I'd leave and pick up the kids at school. I'd bring them home, start dinner, and go waitress. And I did that for like 4 months. And then all of a sudden, 2001 came in March of 2001. All of a sudden, rates came down. The phones were ringing like crazy, and all I did was show up and work hard. Yeah.
That's pretty good. So what kept you going through that hard point? You said 2006.
I had bills. I had 2 kids in school. I had a house. My husband and I divorced in April of 2007, and I didn't have a choice. This is what I knew, and I just stayed the course.
Okay.
That's all I did.
It's pretty honest.
I just put blinders on and said, I got to do this.
Well, it's pretty straightforward. That's pretty good, because a lot of people will, again, they don't come straightforward with that. They're like, oh, but I loved it, and I just wanted to help people. But no, sometimes we have bills.
But I mean, at that time, it was a desperate situation when you didn't know if the company you were with was even going to be open the next day. So that was a fear. And the fear was, what were you going to do with all these loans? Because my course, of course, is to help people. I want them in the home. I want them happy. I want this to be the best thing for them. But at the time, if they had any kind of a credit issue, you were forced to go with some of these lenders that were folding every day. So it was like, what do you do? And it was just a really scary time where, I had to think of myself and my kids and keeping things afloat. And it did. We managed to get through it. And I'm still doing it today and still hope to be doing it 20 years from now because I love it. I do. I really am passionate about what I do. Cool.
So then we get to the post-collapse era. And how's it been since then?
It's been, it's different. It's not... I have to tell you, the 2, 3, 4, 5s, they were exciting. I mean, you had, at times, you could have 50, 60, 70 loans going at the same time. It was just juggling and excitement, and it was fun. It's different today. It's more regulated, of course. We had to go through licensing. Every year you have to get certified again and pay fees to be licensed in the states you can do business. It's stricter in some ways, but really as it always should have been, right? There are certain things you just got to do, and they got away from that, in the early 2000s. They made it so easy for anyone to buy a home, and I think they did a lot of positive things in the changes that came. Just made it more difficult. It was harder to navigate, but then once you learned what you needed to do, again, once you did it, it became easier. The market now is definitely a purchase market. But I have to tell people, if you purchased a home in the last 3 years, 3.5, 4 years, and you have a loan with, say, PMI attached to it, you could refinance today and be in the low 4s, which are great, and get rid of your PMI because of the market and how it's appreciated, and take advantage of what's going. Even if your rate's slightly higher, you're going to save long term. So it is still a really, good market for both.
Okay. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Cool. So let's get into this a little bit then. Do you have particular customers you like working with as like first time buyers, or you're just kind of open to everyone?
Well, I'm open to anyone, absolutely. First time buyers, I really love the millennials. I do. I love them. I love their energy. I love their I don't know how to term this. It's almost like because I have 2 kids, right? I have a 31-year-old and a 28-year-old. And I love to see how they are so, they have plans, right? They put these things in front and how they go after their dreams. And that's what I see when I see millennials. I mean, they're very careful. They're more careful, I feel, than we were at that age with their money. in making decisions, in jumping into something. They're, because of the internet and the ability to go on and Google and ask any question that you can possibly ask and get answers, they're better informed. So I find them, you know, it's interesting to work with them. I love working with first-time buyers. I love helping people that are, say, in a financial situation that have to refinance to maybe pay off debt, help themselves get into a better place. Yeah, I mean, anyone. I just love working with all sorts of people.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. So the point of bringing that up is I've had a lot of realtors in here, so we've talked about the real estate side of things a bit, but I don't think I've ever brought on a mortgage person to talk about mortgages.
Okay.
That's cool. So if you want to, we can get into that. Like,
Okay.
From the very beginning, someone decides they want to get a house. Where do they start? What should they do?
Where do they start is typically people will ask friends, right? They go to their family, they go to their friends. Hey, you know anybody in the mortgage business? So it's kind of like that's their starting point. It's really important, I think, that they have to get qualified first before they really go out and find the realtor.
Yep.
So by getting qualified, I think it's really important for these first-time home buyers to be proactive in getting their credit pulled and in getting their documents looked at. And what I mean by that is there's so many times that people do not realize that, say they have something that happened in their past and they had student loans and they reneged on them, right? Now the government's going to come after you. They're not going to let that just go by the wayside. So all of a sudden you might have a garnishment on your wages. It's important for that to be brought right up in conversation when you sit down with your loan officer and say, this is what I have going on. This is being garnished for my wages.
Yeah.
And that way the loan officer is better able to say to them, okay, fine, we have to show 3 months of payment, or we have to show because you have this garnishment, we actually have to pay that off. It cannot be hanging out there, right? Because student loans are different than, say, an installment loan, right? But it's getting these things done up front before you go look for a home. And so many times people will start looking for a home without getting their ducks in a row. So then it leads to disappointment. It leads to an immense amount of paperwork and running around to get these things that are needed to satisfy what an underwriter is going to want. And sometimes it leads to denial because they're not in a position, there hasn't been enough time. They don't have the money to, say, pay off a garnishment that has to be done. So I really advise people, don't worry about having your credit pulled. The biggest question I get asked, the biggest one is, well, if you pull my credit, my score might go down. I said, well, do you know what your score is? And a lot of times these sites that they pull your free credit on is not accurate because it's a soft pull. And so that's going to be, you know, you can go get a car loan. It's going to tell you have an 800 or an 850 credit score, and yet you go to buy a home and it's saying that you have a 710. Totally different. So I just advise that you have your credit pulled. If there are issues, deal with it, because your credit report's good for 4 months. So it gives you time to take care of business, then get your realtor, and then move forward in the loan buying. Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, as I like that, because I used to sell cars, and a lot of times people would come to me and like, I'm going to buy this car. I'm like, okay, let's get you through the process. And just the amount of hassle of getting them from the show floor to an actual financed car is a pain. And I can only imagine how it is with real estate because I've bought investment properties before, so I know it can get kind of crazy.
It can get crazy.
There's a lot of paperwork out there, especially after the collapse and all that stuff. So just knowing what you need and knowing all of that is kind of crazy. And then you have because most people would say go to the realtor first, typically is what you'd see. So they go through the process, and now they have the realtor who's like really hammering to get the deal done. So it's stressful.
It's very stressful. And I think, but it's the other way around. You need your mortgage person first. Make sure you have no issues with your, credit. It's, excuse me, it's the same thing I just had recently happen where I had a gentleman that had been at his job for 2.5 years. And as of January of 2019, his base was cut because he was brought into commission. Now, granted, long term, he's going to make a lot more money. The problem is I can't use that commission because he doesn't have 12 months of receiving it. So all of a sudden, you take this money off the table. Now you're left with a base. Life changes than what it was in November when he first started the process because now it's all changed. Does that make sense? So by starting first, so he was pre-qualified in November, something fell apart. Now he's coming to me to purchase again in April or May. and I'm telling him things he probably doesn't want to hear.
Yeah.
Right? So that's where it's very important.
Yeah.
To work with the mortgage person and make sure you're solid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty good. And then I think that's it. Like, I can't think of anything else big that goes on there, at least on the beginning side. I know most people make the mistake of, they get everything settled and then they go and start financing a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, you don't buy anything while you're in the house buying process, because we do pull 10 days, up to 10 days before closing. We do a soft pull on you to see if anything's changed. Now, we're not pulling a credit score.
Yeah.
What we want to know is, did you go out and acquire debt?
Yeah.
And did you suddenly take your credit card that only had a $500 balance and charge $10,000 on it, which would change your monthly payment, which means it could affect that debt to income. Yeah. Right? And then it could blow the deal. Yeah. Because all of a sudden now you're like, oh, you don't qualify because your debt to income's a hair higher than you need to be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I like bringing all this up because people just don't understand the backside of real estate.
Right.
Because it's very complicated and very similar to cars. And I think people give car salesmen a really bad rap, but they don't understand that. Just like in real estate, you have the realtor, but then you also have the bank kind of on the side. Mm-hmm. So you have your car salesman, but they're trying to deal with the bank. Mm-hmm. And so it makes this very odd process. So people get angry at the real estate people, not realizing there's a whole lot going on behind the scenes. So yeah.
Right. Well, I know the mortgage person does. I mean, we have an awful lot of responsibility because we are basically bringing this all together. We typically, most cases, will choose the title company. Mm-hmm. We choose the appraiser through a third-party system. So again, it's not a direct relationship. It's kind of like a round robin. Mm-hmm. You order it, and whoever chooses it gets that appraisal. Yeah. But we're the ones who have to meet the deadlines for dates, make sure that person qualifies, make sure the title is in, make sure there's no issues with the title, make sure that the appraiser's done his thing, work with the underwriter, work with the borrower, work with the realtor, bring it to close. And it's a lot, it's wonderful, right? But there's an awful lot of responsibility on that mortgage individual to make sure they're doing their job. Yeah. Right.
And the change in the appraisals, that was been effect of the market crash as well,
correct.
Right? Yeah.
Well, because it was too much say. I mean, I could talk to my appraiser. I could say to him, hey, this is what I'm looking to do. Yeah. And he'd be, again, I'm not trying to tell him what he has to do. I just tell him what I was going to do. Yeah. And so, of course, you have a relationship with that individual for long-term working, and, things would happen. Yeah. And you just, they took that, which is not, again, a bad thing, to distance oneself from who's doing that appraising, Again, to better have the quality of, the value of the home come in based on really its value. Yeah.
Yeah. I gotcha.
Not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Not a bad thing.
Like I said, a lot of little things changed, and people who haven't bought a house in 20 years might not know that. They could be very different buying now to then.
Oh, it's a shock.
Yeah.
It's a shock because there's a lot more paperwork. Yeah. It's very redundant. You'll sometimes sign, depending on the loan program, 2 or 3 of the same papers, right? Depending on what you're doing. And there's an awful lot of documentation when we ask for tax returns and W-2s and pay stubs, and we're analyzing the bank statements. And that's another thing, first-time buyers too, young kids, overdrafts. If you have tight ratios and you're doing a government loan, right, which could be FHA or USDA or VA, and say you overdraft your bank account a lot. Kids don't think anything of it, or may not think anything of it, and say, okay, I'll pay the $20 fee or whatever. But it does hurt, because an underwriter, even though you get an automated approval through the search engine, so we take a loan application, we have your parameters of what you gave us, and then we run it through. We get an approval, or we get a refer, which means you've got to go back and make some changes to have this fit right in the box. And say you get an approval, an underwriter has the final say. So if an underwriter feels your ratios are high, you have no reserves, you're changed jobs a lot, right, in a year, and then they see overdrafts, they can deny it. Yeah. Because it's their ID, their licensing person on that approval. So that's why up front, I want to see 2 months of the most recent bank statements. I want to look at your pay stubs to see if there's anything coming out that I need to know. Yeah. Because a lot of times people, they don't think it's important. And it's not that they're trying to deceive. It's just that they really don't think of it as being, they just used to, it's coming out of their check. They don't think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and we have to look at all of it and then make sure they're going to still qualify, or at least have an underwriter look at it before they sign that purchase and sales, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I'm trying to think. I had one situation back when I sold cars when people don't realize like some things aren't a form of income. Like someone comes in, they're like, "Oh, this is my income." I'm like, "This is child support." It's like, "Yes, this is my income. I can't use that," and then you get all mad at you, and you're like, "Well, I'm sorry to be the bearer of the bad news on this, but if they don't pay you, which typically doesn't happen, you can't use this." So I've been in your shoes, just not in real estate.
Right. Well, I have to tell you, Chris, I think selling cars is a whole lot harder than doing mortgages.
Because people typically want to deal with someone to get the house. People hate car salesmen. Like it's awful.
I don't know how I don't know how you did it and how people do it.
It's awful.
Yeah.
It's awful.
Yeah, it's painful. It's like going to the dentist. Hate to say it, but it's like that. Yeah, it's up there.
So, anything else you wanted to cover quickly before we went over everything?
No, it's just that Northpoint is a fabulous company. We're located in New Hampshire, in Bedford, Portsmouth, and Dover. Okay. We've got offices in Maine. I mean, pretty much throughout New England, Florida, and St. John. So we've been around for 15 years, I think, now. So it's a relatively young company.
Yeah.
Maybe 50, 60 originators. Really, I mean, a small, not like a mid-sized, small to mid-sized company.
Yeah. But
very knowledgeable people. So it's really been a great fit for me to be with this company.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Good. Pretty cool.
All right.
Well, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much, Chris, for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much for watching. Reach out if you need a mortgage, and everyone have a great day.